Sup everybody, this is Karak from ACG, and today I come to you haggard, humbled, and holding my hatred for Xeno scum close to my chest as I bring to you the review for Battlefleet Gothic Armada by Tindalos Interactive for the PC. Battlefleet Gothic is the attempt to take the massive spaceships battle game from the Warhammer Universe board game of the same name and get it into video game form. Just imagine, if you will, the majesty of ancient Catholic cathedrals that someone looked at and said, I bet that thing would look epic in space. So they fused a bunch of rockets to them and sent them into orbit to fight whatever strange crap they found. And found things they did. Basically, it's the Kerbal Space Program as run by the Pope while visiting the Event Horizon. Let's do this for the Emperor. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's the review for Battlefleet Gothic. Floating armed to the teeth Pope Holmes, learning that winning isn't everything, and orcs in space, which goes right up there with it's not a tumor, but it's also not of Earth origin, as something you never, ever want to hear. And as always, graphics are up first. My hat's off to whoever decided the spaceships made of churches would be a good thing. It's amazing. In fact, as spaceships design goes, it's everything you want. Ancient, robust construction, stained glass windows for safety, arching towers, and guns. If you're in Ireland, that's also what you want in a church, but that's beside the point. Listen, Battlefleet Gothic is about the ships, many of them both frighteningly epic and also surprisingly fragile in appearance. And then, of course, taking them out and blowing stuff up. So let's discuss the ships first. From the ship design to the world you fight in, the developer really absolutely nailed the artistic vision here and the look of everything in the title. From the legless, porcine looking ships of the orcs with their multitude of angles, because fuck worrying about resistance in space, it doesn't matter, to the elves ships that look like gliding fish that someone who is really angry glued a ton of guns to, even to the Imperium and some ways the reflective but ultimately reworked ships of the Chaos Forces. Those two are the most particularly interesting to me just because they are reflective of one another, but where the Imperium delights in dark forbidding vessels that seem to sort of carry the entire weight of their religious killing Catholic ways on their shoulders, Chaos vessels have a spot of the pox, occasionally showing that they cover their ships in the gore and viscera of their enemies, probably because they think it's funny. Each race just looks really different from one another, and I love that artistic separation. You know, ships have to have a place to shoot, burn, bash, bomb, laser, mutilate, mine, and eviscerate their enemies anyway. So let's talk about the battlefields. If there's one place where the artistic design is really highlighted, it is in these out-of-the-world skyboxes, some showering down the yellowed light of failing stars, to the up-close and personal feel of flying right over the top of an alien-riddled planet and bombarding your enemy with city-wide lasers in the ultimate show of how war is completely, utterly fair. The locations are half the fun here. That doesn't mean it can't get really busy, and with asteroid fields, random nebulae, and hidden mines laid around by your enemy in all places, I'd be lying if I didn't admit to getting a ship lost a time or two, and this is where the game's realization that it didn't need verticality actually helps it. Sadly, it's also the only place. Now, when it comes to weapon effects, it doesn't matter if you're stripping off the shields of enemy ships with your disruptor bombs or sending out lethal laser bombardments into enemies' bow structures. The particle effects and special moves and special abilities lace the screen in this fantastic display of, hey, look at thisness, that really does well for the game, and it creates an atmosphere of action that really does seem at times far more dexterous than mile-long spaceships ever have any right to feel. I think they did an excellent job of solidifying the artistic representation of the battle fleets and the ships and just the races as a whole. Now, one place where this game has failed the God Emperor is in the frame rate. It really is hit or miss. Even on the 980 GTX, it was dipping below 60 during busy times and getting the mid-40s when new ships were introduced to battle scenes. And that's at 1080p. Texture work is good but not amazing, and up close they can be a bit hit or miss, even on the epic settings, with some really, really muddy textures on the Orc and Chaos Marine ships that just didn't look good at all up close. As a package, I would say the game does look good in what it's trying to do, but it does need some shoring up, especially in its optimizations. Sound, music, and voice.
Yes, Inquisitor. Vessel you can and travel to Orm's world at once. You must stop Abaddon, whatever the cost. He is searching for an ancient artifact known as the Eye of Night. Do not let the despoiler claim this relic, Admiral.
It has reached the last known position of the heretic ships. Their sedition must not stand. How shall we deploy our flagship? Initiate emergency repairs. Course plotted.
And of course, sound is up first in this trilogy of audio awesome. Yeah, it's space, which means none of this could actually be heard, but ignoring that for a second, it sounds epic, from the crushing of car-sized reinforcement struts to the hammering of an entire war world's output of explosive powder in one single dreadnought's devastating broadside. Every damn sound is spot on. Every ship's engine sounds different, with the warbling, almost gonna explode smoky throbbing of the Orcs' ram ships to the twin-turbo-styled high whine of the Elders' cruisers. It's just fantastic, and the developers' adherence to high dynamic range means that every weapon had multiple layers you could hear if you wanted to pay attention to it. Every cannon has that initial low-end boom that fades into a top-end hiss as the shot rockets out of the barrel. Really excellent attention to detail here. Great sound. Music. So defined and subtle, this is not. This is the accumulation of all the ball, sweat, and tears of every Michael Bay soundtrack somehow made it onto the back end of a Conan battle theme. From the string sections that seem to be on the attack against anything else getting anywhere within their tonal range, to the mixing of vocals and percussion that's just absolutely rousing. It's also perfectly suited to mile-wide ships hitting one another while captains say things like, "A good soldier obeys without question, a good officer commands without doubt." I personally love it, but it would be very, very difficult to listen to this outside the game unless your life is nothing but a series of gunfights and 360 pans. Voice. Man, this is also absolutely tremendous. From your main character, Admiral Spire, within the solo campaign, and his accurate portrayal of a man in a desperate world where success is just failure, painted over with pretty words, to the Orcs and their hilarious response to the turbo on their ships going out. Even the Elder and their effective taunts, continually throwing barbs at the other races, backed up by dreadfully powerful weaponry. Really good voice. Gameplay. You can play a solo campaign as a human admiral leading the massive contingent of fools known as humanity into the meat grinder of battle against an overwhelming horde of alien races bent on your destruction. Or you can pick a various number of other game types that offer both single-player and multiplayer fare. First up is the campaign. You play as Admiral Spire, a man who's chosen to field the Battlefleet Gothic Armada, a collection of mankind's most massive spaceships in a bid to protect humankind. This is basically split up into two sections as a game. The first is a galaxy map where you see the worlds humanity controls, their resources they give to humankind, like weaponry or people, and also the various enemy incursions. Now, you can jump between galaxies and see the multi-fronted battle as well. Let me tell you, quickly realize there is simply no way whatsoever in which you can cover all your bases, which is probably why the main screen also has a giant red number to tell you how much you have screwed up by counting down worlds you've lost. Now, from this map, you can also go to Port Maw, a massive boatyard that gives birth to ships at a stunning rate. Now, here you can also spend renown, which is received after winning or losing battles, and then upgrade ships, buy new ones, repair those damaged, and level up various members of your crew. As with all things, these level up skills and new weapons all adjust what the ships can do, and means that even if you have two fielded dreadnoughts, they can be stunningly different in both how they handle, but also what they can do. Now, once you've created your fleet, you can choose a battle from the assorted many that will be infecting your screen within just a couple turns. Planets are really just the roundabout way of saying locations, as many battles that you choose will take place in deep space or in the minefields, and not always at the planet proper. You start out by placing your ships along one side of the map, and then hit start, with later missions playing up with this just a little bit. From that point on, it's real-time strategy, spaceship buccaneer style. You try to outmaneuver, outshoot, and outwit your enemies, all the while they're trying to see how many of you they can jettison into space. Let's break down each one of those elements a bit and look at their both good and bad elements. First is outmaneuvering. Regardless of the race you command, each ship maneuvers a bit differently and can or does have different speeds. By clicking them individually or dragging a box around, you can indicate where they should go or hold the shift button and give them various waypoints if you want to try some cunning maneuver. Here's the weird thing, though. Every single level boils down to watching enemies spit the last frame of their life out in video game movie form anyway at the end of your broadside salute. Though there is an attempt to try to break up later missions with escort missions and missions based right over the top of planets that evolve into trying to shoot one particular ship faster or before another. And then there's just the problem with generally moving around as it is. Smashing into one another, into asteroids, into space stations, into enemies. Apparently in the dark future of Warhammer 40,000, that number actually indicates your blood alcohol level. No shit, it's not that these aren't massive ships, because they are. Each one of these church, town, hovel, or axe blade with thrusters is massive, but it's a fact that the captains would just randomly choose which way to turn to get to a waypoint, sometimes going the long way around like a grandpa refusing to get directions, smashing through 3 massive asteroids, rolling across and through one of your smaller ships, killing hundreds, only to finally plunk down into the spot you asked him to, all satisfied with himself, with a Katrina-like wake of destruction exploding behind him. And that's just if you're human. Also, the camera isn't the best. If you use the arrow keys to move, then God forbid you then click on a skill to use, because boom, the movement with the keys is gone completely, and now they just up and don't work. So if the enemy you wanted to use the skill on is out of the screen, you have to then start using the mouse on the borders of the screen to move around. Luckily, you can rejigger the controls, and I suggest you do, because that's sort of like loading a gun, taking the safety off, and then just saying fuck it, closing your eyes and trying to hit the target still. There's just a lot of fighting of the camera that could have been nullified with a tweaking of the modified WASD control scheme, and I wish it had been in there. Lastly, there are items within the battlefield that affect your movement, like asteroid fields that can cause all kinds of havoc, and then there's nebula that can ruin sensor range and give you a sneaky moment to take out the enemy before they realize you're there. But hey, let's say you do get close enough to shoot or outshoot someone. It's going to happen. Here's where Battlefleet shows its chops, with a vast number of skills and abilities coming into play in an occasionally epic dance of movement, skills, and wits. That's a great thing here, is that there are so many skills, some fairly quick to use, others longer in taking action, that at times you really do feel like a commander, even if you can almost barely tell who you're commanding, because in the end you're usually zoomed out to God's view anyway, with ships looking like visually colored Tootsie Rolls shooting at one another. I was also surprised to find a little bit of minutia here. You can pick to attack certain systems within enemy ship, like weapons, engines, and so forth, which can help a bit depending on the enemy. You also have the ability to define a combat range to battle, as well as which base direction your ship faces, broadsides or face on. Lastly, as I mentioned before, we have the outwitting moment, or tactics, something a game like this with fewer, larger, more robust ships absolutely needs to nail. The problem here, though, is that the mixture of skills, delayed times, as well as speeds of the ships, and also it's all enforced by a point system, means that some battles just feel really odd. You see, you can do things like leader flanks, fake retreats, and pincers. The problem is that it only works at the start of the battle, and the battles here are rarely decisively won in the first moments, even Orcs versus Elder. It does happen from time to time, especially if the enemy has support ships and you can hit them with a pincer movement. But due to the way the game balances your points allowed for choosing ships at the beginning of the battle, it can feel really off. Then there's the massive gulf in some racial abilities like speed. Let's take the Orc versus the Elder for a moment. Imagine entering an ass-kicking contest, but your opponent's made out of legs. Just every limb is a leg, and oh, they have no ass, just two more fucking legs where that should be. That's the Orcs against the Elder. The Elder skim in at light speed, dancing around, call you a name, and then shoot you right in the face. That's not to say it's not balanced at times, because if an Orc rams a ship with their ramming speed ability, then it can take out many larger ships, Elder included, in 1 or 2 hits. Now, of course, there is multiplayer, which is basically single-player Admiral leveling mode, but against humans instead of AI. There isn't a search browser. You just pick your fleet type, your game type, and hit search without any feedback, which can leave you sitting there for some time wondering what's going on until you find a battle to join. While the game does have a couple of modes, what you do begin to realize is that the confined story battles are probably going to be far more interesting than multiplayer and that raise your admiral ranks mode, because there's far more variability to the construction of each battle within the scenarios. As a package, I'd say it's enjoyable, but it suffers a myriad of issues: poor control setup and misuse of the camera system, odd balancing, and really questionable tactics playthrough. Fun factor: I'm going to be honest, I had a blast. Sometimes while playing this game, fielding my fleet against Chaos Hordes was epic, and taking larger and larger ships into battle and trying to work their strengths against enemies' weaknesses was great fun. However, not only did I feel there was a lot missing here, for a game about the hatred of Xenos, they sure did let a lot of bugs get in. Listen, I'm not the best player, but my Admiral Sup, was such a badass that in 2 separate battles he won the level after his ships got destroyed. That's right, the dude must have been out there in some kind of space dinghy, smashing space ores in the sides of Orc ships and scaring them so bad they vapor warped out of there. Because we're talking a full minute and a half after my floating Pope home blew up with my commander in the goddamn thing, I won the game. Though, to be honest, when your ship explodes into pieces, it's actually not destroyed, it just shows up on fire in your shipyard, ready to be repaired. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or in the case of a PC game, deep sale, and never touch it again rating scale. This is a wait for a sale. Without the bugs and with some balancing, it could be different, but currently, I don't feel comfortable telling anybody that this is an instant buy. As always, if you like the video, hit thumbs up. If you dislike it, hit thumbs down. Maybe check out the Patreon, Twitter, Steam group page, whatever you want. Peace out.
To reclaim the hand of darkness. You are to be congratulated for keeping this artifact out of Abaddon's grasp.